The world just changed. While you were watching silver prices bounce around between $89 to $90, three of the most powerful nations on Earth quietly shut down the global silver market. This isn't a policy adjustment. This isn't a trade war tactic. This is a permanent fracture in how silver moves across the planet. And if you don't grasp what just happened in the last 34 days, you won't be ready for what's coming in the next 34. What I'm about to share with you will explain why the silver you thought you could buy tomorrow might not exist at any price. Stay with me because this affects your savings, your investments, and the future of every technology-driven industry in America. Before we go any further, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. This channel, Element Axis, is built to keep you ahead of the curve when markets shift like this. And trust me, you'll want to stay informed on what's unfolding because this story is just getting started. Drop a comment below too and let me know if you're holding physical silver or if you're still in paper assets. I read every single one. Let's start with what actually happened. On January 1st, 2026, China rolled out the most restrictive silver export controls we've seen in modern history. They didn't announce it with fanfare. They didn't hold press conferences. They just quietly implemented a state trading regime that locked down who can export refined silver from their country. And the requirements are brutal. Only 44 companies, all handpicked and approved by the government, are now allowed to export. To even qualify, a company has to produce at least 80 tons of silver every single year and maintain a credit line over 30 million. That's not a small operation. That's industrial scale. And with one policy change, hundreds of smaller exporters got locked out overnight. Gone. No more access. Now here's why that matters. China doesn't just produce a lot of silver. They control somewhere between 60 and 70% of the world's refined silver supply. Not raw ore pulled from the ground, refined silver. The kind pure enough to go into solar panels, semiconductors, electric vehicle batteries, and defense systems. And as of 5 weeks ago, nearly 2/3 of global refining capacity is now ring-fenced for domestic use only. That means the rest of the world just lost access to the majority of refined silver on the planet. But China isn't working alone. Russia just took things even further. Moscow is preparing legislation that will completely halt exports of refined gold bars starting this year. But that's not even the biggest part. They already passed Decree 1947, which bans the export of any recyclable materials containing gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. Russia is locking up its entire precious metals output and funneling it straight into sovereign reserves. No licenses, no exceptions, no negotiations. It's just gone from the global market. And then there's India. On September 25th, 2025, India's trade authority restricted the import of plain silver jewelry until the end of March 2026. Now, you might think that's about reducing demand. It's not. India is the second largest gold consumer on the planet and one of the most aggressive silver accumulators. They're not blocking imports to slow down consumption. They're blocking imports to stop the abuse of free trade agreements that were flooding their market with duty-free silver disguised as finished jewelry. Companies were importing bullion from places like Thailand, calling it jewelry, and dodging the 15% import duty. India shut that loophole down hard. But here's the twist. While they restricted jewelry imports, they simultaneously did something huge. India's Reserve Bank just approved silver as collateral for loans, effective April 1st, 2026. That's a seismic shift. For the first time, Indian households and jewelers can walk into a bank and use their silver to secure financing. Silver just got reclassified from a consumer good to a bankable financial asset. And when something becomes bankable, demand doesn't just stay steady, it explodes. So let me put this together for you. China locked up 60 to 70% of global refined silver for domestic industrial use. Russia banned the export of recyclable precious metals and is preparing to ban refined bar exports entirely. India restricted imports while simultaneously turning silver into a financial instrument. 3 countries, 3 massive policy changes, all within 5 months. And the result is that the global silver market, as it existed for the last 50 years, no longer functions. The free flow of metal from refineries, to exchanges, to industrial users, to investors, has been severed. What's replacing it is a fragmented, nationalized, weaponized system where governments control the supply and industrial users are left scrambling for scraps. Now, if you're finding this valuable, hit that like button and share this with anyone you know who's invested in precious metals or trying to understand where the economy is headed. This information isn't making it to mainstream financial news, and people need to hear it. Let me give you the context you need to understand how we got here. For decades, the silver market ran on a simple assumption. Silver would flow freely across borders based on price signals. If Shanghai needed silver, refiners in Switzerland or the United States would ship it. If COMEX inventory ran low, metal would flow in from London or Hong Kong. The system was liquid, it was global, and it worked, until it didn't. In 2025, silver prices surged over 100%. We're talking about a move from roughly $30 per ounce at the start of the year to over $120 by late January 2026. That's a quadrupling of value in just 13 months. And what drove that move wasn't speculation, it was fundamentals. The global silver market recorded its fifth consecutive year of supply deficits. Demand exceeded production by an estimated 200 million ounces in 2025 alone. Industrial applications like solar panels, electric vehicles, semiconductors, and AI data centers grew faster than mine production could keep up. And the inventories that had cushioned the gap for years started running dry. COMEX registered inventories collapsed 70% from their 2020 peak. We went from 346 million ounces down to 82 million ounces. And in January 2026 alone, 33.45 million ounces were withdrawn in just 7 days. That's 26% of remaining registered inventory disappearing in a single week. When inventories drain while demand accelerates, prices spike. But here's the problem. When prices spike like that, governments panic. Because silver isn't just a commodity, it's a strategic resource. Every advanced economy needs silver for energy transition technologies. Solar cells require silver paste for electrical conductivity, and there's no substitute that matches its performance. Electric vehicles use silver in battery management systems. Semiconductors use silver for chip bonding. AI infrastructure uses silver in servers and data center equipment. Defense contractors use silver in missiles, radar, and communication systems. And when the price of a strategic input quadruples in 13 months, governments stop thinking about free markets and start thinking about national security. China moved first, and their approach was surgical. On January 1st, the Ministry of Commerce elevated silver from an ordinary commodity to a strategic material, placing export controls on the same level as rare earth elements. The policy is straightforward but devastating. Only state-approved companies can export silver. To qualify, you must produce at least 80 tons annually, maintain that $30 million credit line, and receive explicit approval from the Ministry of Commerce for every single export shipment. The result? Hundreds of small and mid-sized exporters who historically supplied global industrial users and refineries were shut out overnight. And even the 44 companies that received licenses are subject to export quotas that can be adjusted at any time. This isn't free trade, this is state control. And the impact is immediate. China is home to 27 accredited silver refineries according to the London Bullion Market Association. The second largest number is in Japan, with only 13. That concentration means China effectively controls the bottleneck in global silver supply. You can mine silver anywhere. Mexico, Peru, Australia, Chile, the United States. But refining capacity is concentrated in China. And when China restricts refined silver exports, it doesn't matter how much ore you pull out of the ground. If you can't refine it to the purity required for industrial use, it's useless. And if the only refineries that can process it are in China, and China won't export the finished product, the global market seizes up. Now, let's talk about Russia's strategy, because it's even more aggressive. Decree 1947 is already in effect, and it bans the export of recyclable materials containing gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. The stated goal is to curb capital flight and eliminate gray market channels. But the deeper strategic aim is crystal clear. Russia intends to redirect its massive bullion output into sovereign reserves. And in the context of Western sanctions, asset freezes, and dollar weaponization, Moscow views physical bullion as the only truly sovereign reserve asset. It can't be frozen, it can't be seized, it simply exists. And in a world where the West can freeze Russian dollar reserves or even gold held in foreign vaults, physical metal held domestically is the only asset that cannot be touched. So Russia is locking it all up. Not just silver, gold, platinum, palladium, all of it. And when the legislation currently being prepared passes, Russia's precious metals output will no longer be available to global markets. It'll flow directly into central bank vaults and sovereign reserves. That removes another major source of supply from the global pool permanently. And then we have India's move, which is more nuanced but equally significant. By restricting jewelry imports, they're protecting domestic manufacturers from duty-free competition. But by monetizing silver as loan collateral, they're increasing domestic demand for physical silver. And those two policies work together perfectly. Restricted imports mean less supply. Monetization as collateral means more demand. And when supply contracts while demand expands, prices rise. Rising prices benefit India's domestic silver industry. Refiners, jewelers, miners, all of them. And the Reserve Bank's collateral decision creates a financial incentive for households to accumulate silver. Because now silver isn't just cultural wealth, it's bankable wealth. You can use it to access credit, you can leverage it, and that changes everything for millions of Indian households. Here's the scale we're talking about. India has a population of over 1.4 billion people. Even if a small fraction starts accumulating silver as financial collateral, the demand impact is enormous. Let's say 10 million households decide to hold an average of 1 kilogram of silver. That's 10,000 tons. And global annual mine production is around 26,000 tons. So 10 million Indian households holding 1 kilogram each would absorb nearly 40% of annual mine production. That's not a small number. And if the policy gains traction and silver lending becomes widespread, the demand could be multiples of that. India is also expanding solar manufacturing capacity to reduce dependence on Chinese panels. And Indian solar panels require silver. So you have domestic industrial demand growing, household financial demand growing due to collateral policies, and import restrictions limiting supply. All three forces are pushing in the same direction: higher prices, tighter physical markets, and greater strategic control. If you're still with me, drop a comment and let me know what you think about these export restrictions. Are you worried about access to physical silver? Do you think the paper market can survive this? I want to hear your thoughts. Now let's talk about price implications, because this is where it gets really interesting. As of right now, silver is trading around $89 to $90 per ounce. That's up from a low of $72.80 earlier this week. But here's the critical piece. While COMEX quotes $90, physical silver in Shanghai is trading at a premium of 12% above London spot prices. That's roughly $11 per ounce just to get actual metal in China. And in Tokyo and Dubai, where industrial users are scrambling for supply, physical silver was changing hands at $130 per ounce in early February. That's a $44 premium over paper, an 80% spread between what COMEX says silver costs and what it actually costs to acquire real metal. This is market bifurcation. The paper market, COMEX, LBMA, ETFs, unallocated accounts, trades based on futures contracts and financial instruments. But the physical market, coins, bars, allocated storage, direct mining deals, trades based on actual availability. And when governments lock up supply, physical availability collapses. And when physical availability collapses, premiums explode. And when premiums explode, the paper price becomes fiction. Because if I can buy a COMEX futures contract at $19, but I can't take delivery without paying $130 for the actual metal, what's the contract really worth? It's worth whatever I can sell it for. But it's not worth the metal because the metal doesn't exist at that price. And here's where it compounds. Industrial users don't have a choice. Tesla needs silver for battery systems. Samsung needs silver for semiconductors. Solar panel manufacturers need silver paste. If they can't source silver, their production lines stop. And when production lines stop, they lose millions of dollars per day. So they pay whatever it takes. They're not speculating. They're securing supply. And that means they'll pay $100, they'll pay $130, they'll pay $150 because the alternative is worse. And that's exactly what we're seeing. In late January, Samsung finalized a $7 million mining prepayment deal with Silver Storm Mining to restart a silver mine in Mexico. They provided upfront capital in exchange for exclusive rights to purchase 100% of the mine silver output for the next 2 years. This is vertical integration. Samsung bypassed COMEX entirely and went straight to the source. And when companies start doing that, it means they've lost confidence in the exchange system. It means they believe COMEX cannot deliver. And when institutional buyers believe exchanges cannot deliver, the paper market is on borrowed time. Let me give you another example. A Canadian mining company called Kuya Silver was approached by 2 Chinese companies offering to buy physical silver at $8 above the market price. One was a manufacturer, the other was a large trading firm. Then on Monday, an Indian buyer approached them with an offer $10 above market. Why? Because China's export restrictions took effect January 1st, and Chinese manufacturers who need silver can't export it. So they're trying to secure supply from non-Chinese sources before everyone else catches on. And Indian buyers are doing the same because they know that once March 31st hits and import restrictions lift, there's going to be a flood of demand, and they want to lock in supply now. This is panic procurement. This is not normal market behavior. This is what happens when governments weaponize commodity supply chains and industrial users realize the free market is dead. So what happens next? The question everyone's asking is, where does the price go from here? And the answer depends on which market you're talking about. The paper market, COMEX futures, could go anywhere. It could drop to $50 if leveraged speculators unwind positions. It could spike to $150 if short covering accelerates. It's driven by sentiment, margin calls, and financial flows. But the physical market is going higher and it's not going back. Because the supply that's been locked up by China, Russia, and India isn't coming back. China's export controls are in place through 2027 at minimum. Russia's decree is permanent. India's monetization of silver as collateral is a structural policy shift that doesn't reverse. And on top of that, industrial demand is accelerating. Solar installations are exploding globally. China installed 212 gigawatts of solar capacity in the first half of 2020 alone. That's more than the entire installed capacity of the United States. Electric vehicle production is scaling. AI data centers are being built at record pace. All of these applications require silver, and there is no substitute. So demand is inelastic. It doesn't drop when the price rises. It stays constant or grows. And when you combine inelastic demand with collapsing supply, you get a price spike, not a bubble. A repricing, a permanent reset to a higher equilibrium. And here's the kicker. The United States designated silver as a critical mineral in November 2025. That means silver is now officially recognized as essential to national security, economic stability, and defense infrastructure. And yet, the United States holds zero strategic reserves. Zero. Meanwhile, China, Russia, and India are all accumulating. China through domestic refining lockup, Russia through export bans, India through import restrictions and monetization. The West is playing paper games on COMEX, while the East is securing physical supply. And when the dust settles, the countries that hold the metal will dictate the terms, and the countries that hold paper will be left begging for access. Now let me talk about the March delivery crisis, because this is the flashpoint. February 27th is first notice day for the March COMEX silver contract. That's when buyers can officially notify the exchange that they intend to stand for delivery. And based on current open interest, there are tens of thousands of contracts that could potentially stand. Each contract is 5,000 ounces. So if 20,000 contracts stand, that's 100 million ounces of delivery demand. But COMEX only has around 60 to 80 million ounces of registered silver. And remember, 33.45 million ounces were withdrawn in January. So the actual available silver is probably closer to 50 million ounces, maybe less. And if delivery demand is 100 million, the math doesn't work. There's not enough metal. What happens then? 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, and COMEX delivers what it can and forces the rest to settle in cash. That's a force majeure event. The exchange declares it cannot fulfill its obligations. And if that happens, the paper market loses all credibility because the entire purpose of a futures contract is that it can be converted into physical delivery. If that conversion breaks, the contract is fiction. Scenario 2, COMEX raises margin requirements so high that it becomes prohibitively expensive to hold contracts into delivery. We've already seen this happen on February 2nd. They can do it again and again until only the most capitalized buyers can afford to stay in the game. But that doesn't solve the underlying problem. It just delays it. Scenario 3, the price goes parabolic. If COMEX can't force cash settlements and can't shake everyone out through margin increases, the only way to clear the market is through price. Sellers who have the metal will demand higher and higher prices until demand drops or new supply enters. And in a squeeze, that process happens fast. Silver could go from $90 to $150 in days. And here's what makes this different from past squeezes. In 1980, when the Hunt brothers tried to corner silver, it was a speculative play. They weren't consuming the metal. So when the exchange changed the rules and forced liquidation, the squeeze collapsed. But today, the buyers are industrial users. They're not speculators. They're companies that need silver to keep production lines running. Tesla, Samsung, solar manufacturers. And when industrial buyers stand for delivery, they're not trading. They're securing supply. And you can't force them to liquidate the same way you can force speculators, because if they don't get the metal, their factories stop. And that's a bigger problem than taking a loss on a futures trade. So the March delivery period is going to be critical. And based on what we're seeing, China's export restrictions, Russia's export ban, India's import controls and monetization, COMEX inventory drain, physical premiums exploding, industrial buyers bypassing exchanges, the odds of a smooth delivery are low. The odds of a crisis are high, and the odds that the paper market survives intact are close to zero. So what should you do? If you're holding physical silver, coins, bars, allocated storage, you're positioned correctly. The supply lockdown validates your thesis. The countries that control production and refining are hoarding. That means the metal you hold is scarcer than the market realizes. And as that scarcity becomes undeniable, premiums will widen, and your metal will be worth significantly more than paper quotes suggest. Hold. Don't sell into panic. Don't chase short-term price moves. The long-term trend is clear. Physical is diverging from paper. And when that divergence becomes permanent, physical holders win. If you're holding paper silver, ETFs like SLV, unallocated accounts, futures contracts, you need to make a decision. Can you convert to physical? Some ETFs allow redemption in kind, but only for authorized participants. Retail holders get cash, so if you're retail, you can't convert. You can only sell your shares and use the proceeds to buy physical. But here's the problem. If everyone tries to do that at the same time, premiums explode. By the time you sell your ETF shares and try to buy physical, the spread might be $20, $30, or $50 per ounce. So the window to convert is now while premiums are elevated, but still manageable while physical is available, before the March crisis makes it obvious to everyone. If you're thinking about buying silver for the first time, understand what you're buying into. This is not a stable market. This is a market in transition. The old rules, paper equals physical, arbitrage equalizes prices, supply flows freely, are breaking. And when rules break, volatility spikes. Silver could drop to $70. It could spike to $150. It could do both in the same week. So if you can't handle that volatility, don't buy. But if you can, and if you understand that the long-term trend is supply contraction and demand acceleration, then dollar cost average. Buy a little now, buy a little next week, buy a little next month. Build your position over time. And focus on physical, not paper, because paper is what governments control. Physical is what you control. And finally, if you're sitting in cash watching this unfold, recognize what you're witnessing. This is not a temporary policy shift. This is a permanent restructuring of global commodity markets. China, Russia, and India are not going to reverse these policies. China's export controls run through 2027 at minimum. Russia's decree is permanent. India's collateral monetization is a structural change that doesn't unwind. So the free market assumption that commodities flow to wherever the price is highest is dead. And what replaces it is a system where governments control supply, strategic buyers lock up production, and everyone else pays premiums or goes without. The global commodity system is fragmenting. Free trade is being replaced by resource nationalism. And the countries that secure physical supply now will control the industries of the future. Solar, electric vehicles, semiconductors, AI, defense, all of it depends on silver. And the countries that don't have it will be left behind. 3 countries just rewrote the rules. China locked down refined silver exports. Russia banned precious metals exports. India restricted imports and monetized silver as financial collateral. The free market is dead. The paper system is dying. And the physical supply lockdown is permanent. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? If this helped you understand what's happening, make sure you're subscribed to Element Axis. Hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to see it. The global supply lockdown is here, and the only asset that matters is the one you can hold in your hand.